Let's bring into the conversation now Jamil Jaffer, founder of the National Security Institute and former senior counsel to the House Intelligence Committee. Jamil, it's great to have you with us. So there is a lot of questions, as we just heard there from my colleague, and I want to pose some of these questions to you. Based on what we have heard now, what immediately jumps out to you about the developments over the past 24, 48 hours regarding the frequency in which these objects are appearing and being shot down aggressively by the United States and Canada, obviously in this binational command, but also whether or not who is responsible and who might be responsible behind this?
Well, Iman, it's a great question. I think Dan, raised the point that in this latest press conference, we heard that this object was cylindrical. It's interesting because John Kirby on yesterday described the object that was shot down over Alaska as silverish gray and also cylindrical. Both described them as smaller than the Chinese spy balloon that was shot down last week. So it appears there may be some surface similarities between the object shot down Friday and the object shot down Saturday. Both objects, it turns out, also transited at some point over Alaska. We do know that this latest one that went over Canada was briefly over Alaska, went towards the North Pole, and then came back down through the Yukon, where it was shot down by a US F-22 operating in consultation with the Canadian authorities. So there may be some relationship between these two objects. The question, though, as you point out, right, is what is the relationship, if any, to the Chinese spy balloon? And if these are, in fact, 3 Chinese surveillance devices, which there's no evidence yet to suggest that, does that suggest that we're closer to a conflict with China than we ever thought?
So can you, this may be a technical question, but what qualifies as high altitude compared to the spy balloon? The spy balloon, I believe, was at some point in the 35,000 range. I would suspect by definition, this being high altitude, that it's much higher than that. And I guess officials did not feel that the falling debris, both the one shot over Alaska and the one shot over Canada today, are posing a risk to people or inhabitants below?
Right. So my recollection of the Chinese spy balloon was that at one point, at least, it was also at 60,000 feet. These balloons appear to be somewhat lower at about 40,000. These vehicles, we don't know what they are. At least the one shot down yesterday was described as being at around 40,000 feet, which the Biden administration said made it a potential threat to U.S. and international commercial airliners, which is one of the reasons they gave for taking it down. In the case of the Canadian object, we don't know what altitude it was at. But Prime Minister Trudeau did indicate that he made the decision to take it down in consultation with the United States. Not clear the reasons why they made that choice, though. And so still a lot more to learn about both of these incidents, right? And what's really interesting, I think, Iman, and to the point that Dan made, right, we haven't heard any description of what these objects were there to do, why they were there, who owns them. Both these two objects, Friday and Saturday, no real information. That itself is troubling.
Should we be concerned? I think a lot of people are watching this, and as we mentioned, this is the third object shot down over North American skies in the last 2 weeks. Give me your analysis here. What is going on? Should we be concerned?
Yeah, not just the last 2 weeks. It's probably been. I don't recall in the last decades that I've been alive that any objects being shot down over American airspace, potential foreign or adversary objects. So that itself is very troubling. I think we should be concerned because clearly somebody is sending something over our airspace that's either collecting intelligence or the like. Now, there's a possibility, a small one, that these two most recent objects, these two cylindrical objects, are just other types of weather balloons or other, devices that are not from an adversary. But we have no reason to believe that. And the U.S. and Canadian governments at least were concerned enough to take action swiftly to take both these down within 24 hours of detecting them. They're taking both of them down. That alone should be concerning the American people. And the American people and Congress should demand answers. What is it that's going on here? Why are we only learning about these things? And why don't we know what they're doing over our airspace?
So let me be a little skeptical here. And given the political nature in our country right now, the kind of over-politicization of everything, do you believe that the U.S. and Canada might have been overreacting after such public outrage, certainly from the Republicans, over this Chinese surveillance balloon? Or do you think, based on the limited information we have, they are acting appropriately? Because as you mentioned, and you certainly have the experience way more than I do, I don't recall the United States ever, and we heard this actually today from the Canadian Defense Minister, that this is the first time NORAD has ever taken down an object over North America. So when you look at the height of some of the tensions that the U.S. and Canada have experienced, nothing like this has ever happened before, and now we have 3 incidents in the span of a week.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that it's just political pressure that's causing the U.S. and Canadian governments to act this way in the last 2 days. Even if you say that, well, the White House was under significant pressure, it felt like it had to act. Certainly the same doesn't apply to Justin Trudeau, and he made an independent decision to ask Canadian American fighter jets to be scrambled and ultimately take action. Both, by the way, both the White House and the Canadian Prime Minister did spend about 24 hours examining these objects, trying to make a decision about what to do before they took action. We learned yesterday that object was first detected in the evening on Thursday, and now the Saturday object we're learning was detected on Friday. So both have taken their time to try and make a decision. They did ultimately make the decision to take these objects down without knowing exactly what they are or who sent them, but it looks like they're making the decision based on national security and not politics in those cases.
All right, Jamil Jaffer, thank you so much. You certainly helped us kind of begin to try to analyze this and try to make sense of it. Certainly a lot more questions remain unanswered. Always a pleasure. Thank you, my friend.